Hello there, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about Masters of the Air, which is the TV show that is shot as basically 1 hour films, basically for 8 parts, all about the air division of World War II. Because it's for the people who did Band of Brothers in the Pacific, which were both much better than this, by the way. Just to start off, this is the weakest of the 3. And it's the weakest because of the scripting, really. There's lots of script problems in this thing. And it's very annoying because you get some good moments and then suddenly you get some trash. And it's all about scripting, things aren't paid off. They have structural ideas they've got to try and deal with reality of lots of people coming through, some people getting killed, some people moving on. But they don't solve these problems. And you're feeling of a lot of time gaps, jumps that makes you very disconnected from the story. So you just get a sense of how much time's passed between this and that, and you never quite know. So it is about the 100th Division and which were were called the Bloody 100, which because they were the division that had the most deaths. They had a lot of the tougher missions because they went to fly during the day. The British went to fly at night because they knew they were going to get hammered if they flew during the day. The problem was they couldn't see the targets. A lot of times they missed their targets and caused havoc. But they'd less fatalities. Americans flew during the day, so they were much easier to spot and they could send planes after them. But they could see the targets better, so they had a much better chance of success. So you had 2 different areas of, basic philosophies of how to succeed. And the Americans think the British have been a bit cowardly with that, and the British think the Americans have been stupid because it's you're going to die. And the thing is, the Brits have been at the war for 3 years before the Americans join. They're already in the middle of the Battle of Britain, which would last forever. I mean, they've had they've already dealt with the German advance on Britain, bombing their cities and things. They've already got all that. They're already dealing with that. So, the philosophy is actually a lot more solid than this show actually admits to. I mean, the big problem is it's very American-centric, so it's just about the American experience in a lot of ways. Which means it can be stunningly ignorant of other cultures. The other cultures either are the villains, the Germans, the villains, or there are countries under occupation, so that they're the brave resistance. And the resistance can be a bit cold sometimes as they're trying to avoid getting caught. But you don't see that much of them, so they do come out of a cliche pretty quickly. And Britain has done this caricature of the stuffy Brits. And it's no, Britain had its problems, but it had just been under 3 years of invasions and failed invasions to the continent, dealing with the Germans attacking them back. They were ready well into the war and had already been pounded for years at this point. So the show doesn't really go into that, and it is quite annoying for that, really, because it's just the American point of view, but the Americans do tend to come across as gits at times. And it does have that kind of American, exceptionalism thing, but not really acknowledging those other points of views as much as they could. Or having an ironic look at their own people saying, yeah, they were really brave, but they missed stuff too, and it's it doesn't really have that balance of getting into our culture. Because in a story, getting into our culture, part of the fun is, where is one culture good, where is one culture bad? In this one, it's the Americans are great, and everyone else is trying their best, but not quite as good as Americans, and it's that's bullshit. I mean, really, if you come from Europe, you view the Americans of war as you stayed out for 3 bloody years before you come in, and then you come out and say, oh, we won the war, and it's shut up. There just there's that tone to it that's really annoying. But the actual actors are good. There's a lot of British actors here playing Americans because it was shot in Britain, because the location they're flying from is Britain, so it's much easier to shoot in Britain. So Barry Keoghan's in it for like 3 episodes. Austin Butler from Elvis and Dune Part 2 is in it, and he's a very good lead. The problem is he disappears halfway through the show for a while because he becomes a prisoner of war, and the show just dips instantly because it's like he's carrying the show, then suddenly you don't have him in the show, and they replace my new character, and they kind of crossover off. It's because there's basically 2 shows. You've the first 4 episodes are the Austin Butler Callum Turner show because they're both playing these flight guys who start at the beginning of the war. They're ready to go even before the country's ready to go, and you see them for 4 episodes. Then it goes over to another guy who took over, pretty much was the big guy on the side of the people doing the bombing for the second half of the campaign. Basically, he was the your second lead character ultimately for the last half of the show. You're seeing a lot of stuff from his eyes, but he's so introduced so weirdly that you know in theory he should be the lead, and the actor's doing a good job, but it's not written very well, so you don't get a sense of an actual crossover between them, so you know that this is part of the story. It just feels very disjointed and weird. And that happens a lot. I mean, sometimes characters die. Barry Keoghan dies pretty early, which is a big shock thing of a well-known actor dies. But unfortunately, because he's done so much recently, there's no way he was in this TV show for like a year. Like, he's been in a ton of stuff in the last year when we're shooting this, so he's dying. As soon as you see him, he's dying early. Because there's no way he'd shoot all these other things he's been in recently. And it's just a sense of they're going from set up to set up to set up of this is interesting with the war, this is interesting with the war. And you get a lot of good scenes in the cockpits as they're doing these missions. The missions are all well done, but outside of that, you don't get a sense of progression a lot of the time. It starts off okay when you've got Austin Butler and Callum Turner characters. So they can talk to each other, because one's the commander and one's the main pilot, but they're both friends and they're both about the same age. And there's no conflict, it's just like 2 friends. And they play off the Barry Keoghan character, a couple other characters, and you get a sense of who they all are. There's a navigator character who goes all the way through it. In the background, he's like one of the lead characters, but he's always like the secondary character for any of the episodes. But as he's the one consistent character, he becomes one of the lead characters. He's really one of the lead characters. But so he's kind of the character you have to kind of hook onto a little bit, the navigator. But everyone else just jumps in and out of it, and you get a consistency of, I'm not invested with these characters enough, because it's like you're jumping 3 or 4 months suddenly, and you're not really acknowledging it, or you do it in one line, and it's like there's no progression of actual storytelling, not just this is the historical situation. It's like, where's the actual story you're telling? Because it just feels disjointed bits of moments, and you haven't kind of looked at it structurally as a story. Is like, we need this, we need that, we need that to tell the story, not just to have the historical elements. So you have a lot of moments that are really good historical things, like when they're getting shot down and when they have to go through the initiation before they get to the prisoner of war camp, and how some of the prisoners are killed before they get there, and all the problems in prisoner of war camps. All that stuff's interesting, but it's so disjointed the way they do it. It just feels like it's from another show, even though it's characters from this show, and they're cutting back and forth from them and the pilots as well, and it just feels weird. The whole thing just feels like it has it should have been like 10 episodes rather than 8. And the episodes should have been a bit shorter. And I think basically they could have spread out things and explained things more detail and more naturalistic, and you could have had just better storytelling. Because you feel like the story's getting crammed in too tight. And then sometimes you've got the end of an episode, it feels like the start of another episode. And you get into that, then suddenly the episode ends, and then you have to start back next week, and it's like, it just feels very disjointed, just very weirdly structured, and you cannot connect with your lead character for the second half of the show because he's introduced in a weird way. He goes up to one flight and then he's taken off and sent to a place for mental health for another episode, and that's just like, you've not set him up to need to have any damage yet. When he's complaining he doesn't need it, you're like, yeah, why would he send him there? Obviously he doesn't need it. I mean, you can understand from the terms of the storytelling of the characters of what the motivations are, but as a story technique, it just feels just weird. It just feels off. And it's not built up in a way that, not directed in a way that actually makes you understand the logic of the decisions. And there's a lot of that where there's a lot of kind of directing that's kind of half done, is the best way to put it, where you have good moments and other moments which are just there. And there's a lot of that because there's a lot of directors in there, and it's like, the thing is, if you watch something like Twin Peaks: The Return, it's always David Lynch, so he knew where everything connected, so even if things seem to meander off, they all connected again. You always get a sense of a structure of a story. In this one, they just go all over the place, and it's the problem with lots of different directors on one long story is it can feel very fragmented, and this show feels very fragmented. Like the best stuff comes early, and then the other stuff, which is better material, comes later in the prisoner of war camps and things. But there's the kind of the actual main story of the people doing the bombing runs kind of peters out after a while, because you're more into the prisoner of war camp stuff with the characters from the first half than you are for what the guys left behind are doing on the planes. And at a certain point it becomes like, just stick to one character and just put the experiences through the war rather than trying to separate them. And because the structure of the story was suddenly split off into another character that is not been established, you have to do that really carefully to make it work, and this show does not do it carefully. It just puts things down, this happened, and it's like, I can't engage in that. There's nothing there that's making me engage in this story. So it's just a weird thing where I wanted to like it a lot more than I could like it. You know, the battle scenes were always good, and the actors were all doing their best, but sometimes you could tell there were British actors playing Americans, and the accents could be dodgy. Sometimes you could just tell that the information they were portraying was a bit off or a bit cliched. And also there's other times it's like, you've set this up for an episode and then you barely see these characters again and they're gone after that. There's one thing with people who are shot down, you see them going through Belgium, I think, where they shot down, and the resistance taking them away and helping them escape. And then they come back home and they're sent home. And you never see them again. And it's like, well, maybe that happened in reality. But because you had these characters doing this stuff, then they disappear for a bit, and then they come back, and then they disappear again. It's just very unrelatable. It's just like, you'd almost forgotten about them, and then suddenly you have to relate to these characters again. It's like, that happens all the time in this show. It's like, expect you to remember tons of stuff about people who they've just dropped for like, you know, an episode and a half, and focus on something else, and all these other things happen, and they've changed the whole setup of the show at that point, and you have to remember like, these two minor characters you've not seen for a while. And the show's always like that. It's just like, you're meant to remember stuff that it hasn't been placed down in ways to help you remember it. It's just been like thrown at you. So that's a very annoying show. Cause I really wanted to like it, because I like stuff about airplanes and World War II and all that stuff. But it was just like, give me Air Force by Howard Hawks directing, which is obviously propaganda and obviously not real. Not half as realistic as this thing. And it's still so much more entertaining because there's a story to it. And this one doesn't have a story. This one has moments. And it just like things it needs to put in, and it's just a mess. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're a masochist, you can watch the show, but it's going to frustrate you. It's really frustrating. Okay, that's me for now. Bye.